Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Jamf After Dark podcast, a podcast to introduce you to the people at Jamf, learn about what we're up to when it comes to managing and securing devices, along with what is happening in the IT landscape. I'm your host, Kat Garbus. Today, we're going to showcase a special episode that has a conversation led by Vasant Rao, the managing director of the IDC. The IDC, which is short for International Data Corporation, is the premier global market intelligence, data, and events provider for information technology, communications, and consumer technology markets. With more than 1,300 analysts worldwide, the IDC offers global, regional, and local expertise on technology and industry opportunities and trends in over 110 countries. Vasant will discuss the challenges in the current technology landscape that includes management and security with a focus in India. Today, to discuss with him, he has Liz Benz, the Global Chief Sales Officer at Jamf, Ben Oxnam, our Senior VP and General Manager at Jamf for EMEIA, and TK Chiranjeev, the Country Head of India at Jamf. I invite you to listen to this very special and interesting episode right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Vasant Rao, the Managing Director for IDC in India and South Asia, and your host for the session today. Organizations currently face a very complex digital landscape. We operate in a work from anywhere, anytime, and on any device kind of paradigm, and that has resulted in a proliferation of devices in the enterprise, be it mobile phones, smartphones, MacBooks, laptops, etc. This has also thrown up a lot of security and management challenges. In fact, in India, 43% of CISOs tell us that identifying the right device management and endpoint management solution is a key enabler for them as they roll out their zero trust strategy for their organization. So clearly, it's a very important topic. And to discuss this important topic, I have with me three distinguished guests who are experts in the field of mobile device management, or MDM as we call it. And I'd love to pick their brains on what the industry holds for us, especially in the next couple of years. So I have with me Liz Benz, the Global Chief Sales Officer at Jamf. Welcome, Liz. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And also Ben Oxnam, the Senior VP and GM for EMEIA region at Jamf. Hi, Ben. Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
And I also have TK Chiranjeev. Hi, Chiranjeev. You're the India head for Jamf. It's nice to have you here as well.
Thanks, Vasant.
Wonderful. So I have a few questions and let me get started right away. What I would now think is the mandatory question in the world of tech, which is about AI. AI is the buzzword. Everyone's talking about it. And to be fair, AI is very transformative. As IDC, we believe that it's going to be embedded into all kinds of processes, operations, products, etc. in the next couple of years. Even in India, we see a very strong growth rate in enterprise AI spend. As an example, we expect it to be around 35% CAGR between 25 to 28. And we're talking big numbers here, $9.2 billion by 2028. So it's a big investment enterprises are doing, and I'm sure this is disrupting the MDM space as well. I'd love to know more about that. And the more specific question I have for you, Ben, is how is Jamf looking at this whole industry shift? And in the age of AI, how are you innovating so that you can deliver more value to your customers?
AI, of course, is at the top of everyone's mind across the industry at the moment. For us, our customers are adopting it in different ways. Some have adopted it very quickly, but I think the majority are taking slower steps into the adoption of AI within their organizations. And I think that's because of their concerns around exposing all of their data out to the public market. They're thinking, can we leverage those tools to make our workflows better? But they're really thinking about, like I said, adopting it in a thoughtful way so as to be very secure around their own IP. And Jamf is very similar. So we are adopting tools, and actually we've been using artificial intelligence for many years in different parts of our technology stack. I think about our security tools. When we're looking for zero-day threat threats out in the market, we've used machine learning for many years to be one step ahead of the malicious actors, and so it's not new technology to us. However, like I said before, the large language models and those types of technologies do run that risk for us if we're using them in the wrong way of exposing our own IP out to the market. So we're very thoughtful in how we're progressing with artificial intelligence.
And you're right. And in many ways, it's also like a cat and mouse game, right? So even the cyber threat actors are also working on AI, and I'm sure so is Jamf. And I'm sure AI can help not only in quick rollout of, let's say, operational patches in the Apple ecosystem, as an example, but also in improving your threat defense as an organization. So is it something that enterprises are asking you consciously, or is it something you are embedding into your product just so that you can keep delivering value? Maybe Liz, if you want to take that.
I think our organizations are asking us for help, right? They're asking to make sure that we have, the most up-to-date solutions around threat detection. And we really differentiate ourselves there. Because we're Apple first, Apple best, we can provide it in a way that's very different than some of the other providers. And I think, when we look at AI and threat detection in our solutions, we do it on both the end device as well as the network. So we have like a kind of a double layer to help our customers. And AI can be really scary, right? Like it can be one of those things that a lot of our customers are just, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. And our job is to help make sure that we're taking those devices and managing them and securing them in the best way possible for them to feel more comfortable and they feel more compliant so that they can experiment with other things.
Thanks, Liz. I'll now move into the Apple ecosystem and Jamf in more particular order. So I know that Jamf, of course, is a leading player in the Apple ecosystem from an MDM perspective. And the good news for you really is that Apple is doing very well in India, and I'm sure Chiro will also allude to that. If I look at IDC data on Apple's corporate shipments of MacBooks, as an example, we expect that to double in the next 6 to 8 months. Now, it's on a small base, of course, but nevertheless, it's a staggering number. So between now to the early part of Q4 2025, we expect that to double. And we know a lot of large corporates which have signed up with Apple on their Apple MacBooks. So, but the question I had is, in India especially, there will be many enterprises who have not just Apple, but also have Android products, for instance, because many of them also allow BYOD. And I'll talk about BYOD later. But the question I now have is, for organizations that have both products in their ecosystem, why does it make sense for them to work with Jamf for Apple and some other platform for a non-Apple kind of a product suite? Because again, I'd like to share some IDC data point over here. More than a third of Indian companies say that when they are trying to build a transformation in their platform ecosystem, in their entire IT architecture, putting all of that architecture together, putting a platform together and having a single pane of glass for management observability is very, very critical. So with that in mind, I have two questions. One, why Jamf for Apple and somebody else for non-Apple? And the other is, do you integrate with other platform players so that if an enterprise has all kinds of products in their ecosystem, does it give them a cross OS, integrated view, which is what all management seek?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, we believe at Jamf that we really believe in the purpose-built solution for our customers. And what I mean by that is our customers, our end users, the IT folks at our organizations, they're really interested in looking at making sure that their end user, so the worker, is productive. And it's easy to use, right? It's got to be really easy for them. So they're looking for customer satisfaction. And with a purpose-built solution, you can get that, right? And what, we believe that all they want is to make sure that their customers are happy, right? And make sure that they can be productive on those devices. And with, us being Apple first and Apple best, we are able to provide the ultimate Apple experience. And that's where we're headed. Now, we don't believe that a single pane of glass isn't something that most customers want. We do understand it. And the reality is that, if you look at any of our organizations, typically they have a department that focuses on Mac, another department that focuses on mobile, and you might have another one that focuses on like help desk or something like that, right?
Okay.
And so while most companies are asking for a single pane of glass, each one of those divisions needs to be very effective in their roles, servicing like a certain device or something like that. We're really proud of what we've been able to do in the mobile front as well as our frontline workers. We're able to solve very specific use case where we can make things easier. So we make things easier in retail, for example, making sure that the customer that walks in the door has a seamless experience with their individual that they're working with. Another example is in healthcare, shared devices. So you might have a patient that comes into a hospital and it has a specific profile that they need to use on an iPad, for example. And then you might have another patient, that patient leaves, another patient comes in, and you need to have a different profile. We're really very focused on making sure that the experience with the device is absolutely the best possible. And that's where the Apple first, Apple best comes in.
I was going to say, I think where we do see a need for that kind of single pane of glass most often is in the CISO organization. So, most of our customers in the security teams within our customer spaces are really keen to have a single pane of glass to view what's going on across the organization. So what Jamf does is focus on our integrations in that area, exposes our APIs. So if a customer is using a certain SIM tool, they can plug in our data into that SIM tool and get the specific telemetry from the devices that we're managing or securing. So I think that is the use case that comes up the most that requires that single pane of glass.
So from what I understand, being purpose-built obviously elevates the user experience significantly. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, since you have an integration already into a larger platform so that there is a single pane of glass, yes, which is not compromised, by the way, that ensures that the management also gets what they want, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess that's the message. That's the message. Yep. But I'm very keen to hear from you, Chiranjeev. What is the India experience that you have seen? I'm sure you speak to a lot of Indian customers. What is their take on this whole debate about Apple versus non-Apple products, and what are you hearing from them?
I think firstly, in terms of the growth of Apple devices, while we have seen a two-folds of increase, I think it's true for India as well. I think India is one of the fastest growing regions for Apple globally. And earlier it used to be in terms of largely around developers using Apple devices. I think it's going beyond that. I think while we look at in terms of banking customers, for example, today are looking at in terms of, okay, how can they have an heterogeneous kind of platform, not just being dependent on one, but having multiple platforms in terms of having the right devices for the right users, where user experience is going to be important. Keeping in mind in terms of compliance as well, right? From an Indian perspective, I think it's still a question in terms of for the IT and security leaders in terms of while they want to kind of reduce the number of agents which are sitting on a device, mm-hmm, where the whole unified conversation kind of comes in, versus in terms of do we have the right tool for the platform? I think what we see globally and also true for India is for each of the platforms, you will look at a stack which is going to be purpose-built, where it's going to be critical, like, for example, device management and security are critical tools for you to kind of have them on platforms. So those probably would be more purpose-built. And there would be certain tools in terms of when you look at productivity, for example, mm-hmm, right? So they will probably not have different productivity tools for different platforms. So they're going to probably have more unified approach in terms of that category. So I think we see in India in terms of the security and IT leaders to be looking at in terms of while they want to kind of unify, but actually creating a right balance in terms of purpose-built and in terms of unified tools. And the single pane of glass has been there in the past and will continue to be there in terms of the question, because it's in terms of the ease and also in terms of how quickly probably you want to get that information right. And especially in the security side of things, I think that's where from a true enterprise tool perspective, which Jamf is, I think our value comes in terms of our integrations with the other enterprise tools which is out there. So I think that's going to be the differential factor in terms of handling that question.
No, the integration is key. I completely agree with you. And we've seen this in a number of other places as well, beyond MDM. Whenever an organization talks about having an architecture where there are fewer platforms, you can't really cut it down below a particular number of players in the ecosystem, because you also want to make sure that you have the best of breed solutions. And I think that's what you're getting at. So Chiranjeev, thanks for that. I'll stay with you and again try to get some more India context on another very important point that you actually raised about productivity. So let me bring you to the notion of a trade-off. Any decision we take, any platform an enterprise buys, always involves a trade-off. In this case, I'm referring to the trade-off between security and productivity. And this is an important one because, again, I found some very interesting data from our IDC research, which says that 43% of CISOs in India say that balancing security priorities with productivity and business needs are actually a key limiting factor in enhancing their security posture. Now, that's a big one because what it's effectively saying is, hey, I can do more on security, but I'm limited by the fact that I also need to ensure a better user experience. So the question I have for you is, as Jamf, and maybe you can give the India context and what is it that Indian customers are looking for. For Jamf as a platform, how are you ensuring that you are able to give the best of security without compromising user experience?
I think it's a very debatable question, right? Because I think which is very relevant in the industry right now in terms of when a CISO looks at in terms of the security posture, vis-a-vis in terms of productivity and experience. So you always probably need to kind of look at the term compromise kind of comes in,
right?
Which is actually not necessary if you have the right tool. I think what we see today in the enterprise and in the organization is more in today we have millennials and the Gen Zs kind of coming into the workforce. I think the key aspect to kind of engage with that employee base is to kind of create that experience what they use outside work.
Yeah,
I think that's the balance that today organization trying to kind of achieve in terms of how can we kind of have a unified experience in terms of when you walk out of work in terms of your personal device, vis-a-vis in terms of your organizational device, do you have a similar experience? I think in India we've started seeing in terms of roles getting created like chief experience officer, in terms of which we had never heard of, right? I think these are roles probably even 10 years ago you wouldn't have thought about that there would be someone actually looking at experience end to end. So experience is going to be really, really important. So is compliance, right? I think, and that's where probably in terms of having for example with Jamf, we are kind of the gold standard when it comes to device management and in terms of security as well. Where it's purpose built, and so we are the most native tool out there in terms of making sure the IT and the security team kind of have their compliance requirements kind of met, and also from a user perspective, they don't feel an additional layer which is actually sitting on and probably pulling down the performance or the experience that they would want to kind of have on an Apple device. I think that's how I think we would see that as we're moving forward. The experience conversation, I think, is going to get even more stronger in terms of having that experience, but also in terms of threats out there. Okay, compliance, criteria is also kind of keep going up. I think that's a key aspect for us as an organization in terms of what we're able to kind of drive in terms of creating that balance.
So that balance can be maintained as long as you have the right tool. It's not really a compromise, is what you're saying. And do Indian enterprises come to you saying, I want this or the other, or is it always both? Clients are always demanding. What's your experience been?
I think, as you said, probably I would need the best of the tool out there, kind of which can solve, something which has the magic sauce, and kind of solve all the problem. When you actually kind of have that conversation in terms of their priorities, I think it becomes easier for them to kind of actually identify saying that, okay, this is the right tool for my organization, which can bring in that balance. So I would still not say that they would kind of go and compromise on a tool. I think there's more information and clarity now for them to kind of take that decision.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. Liz, maybe in a global context, do you have a similar experience with your clients outside India as well?
Yeah, so the reality is that when you look at the priorities of a CISO or any executive staff, outside of their strategic priority to grow, their number one concern is security, right? They want to make sure that their data is secure, their employees are secure, and their devices are secure. So what that means is that sometimes you'll see in any environment, there may be 11, 12, 13 agents on a device. And the more you can cut that back, the better off it is from a user experience. Now, most CISOs are interested in doing it, cost effectively, as well as making sure that it works in their environment. We talked about purpose built in the past, and our security solutions are purpose built for that as well. And Chiranjeev talked about the employees that are using Apple devices. They are earlier in their career, and they have a different set of demands. They expect it to just work, right? Some people that have grown up in organizations, they are used to devices being a little bit slower, that sort of thing, and everything is instantaneous now. So we're seeing a lot of interest and demand in terms of making sure we've got a solution that the device can work fast and seamless, so you don't even know it's there.
Right. And I think you bring up a great point, because also the point about purpose built, I think the value of that really comes out when we are talking about these kind of trade-offs, because it is purpose built, you've taken care of security as well as user experience as part of your DNA, I'm sure as part of your R&D and so on. Right? And I think that is what will shine through when an employee uses the device and the MDM from Jamf or any other market leader for that reason, right?
Yeah, our hope is that they don't even know we're there, right?
Right.
Our hope is that they know that the device is managed by Jamf when they log onto their computer, and that's it, right? We make it seamless for them to around identity management, to make them log into their apps with no problems. We make it seamless for them to use their apps and get new apps. And same thing for security, right? When they're out and about and traveling on their Mac or their iPad, they should be able to access the data, sensitive data, but in a secure environment. And that's what gives a lot of CISOs, allows them to sleep at night.
Right. So great user experience, seamless, secure, and fast. I guess
Exactly.
these are the buzzwords. And I
Yes.
suppose, and I'm sure that's the reason why IDC would have also voted Jamf as one of the major players in the UEM market space as well.
Yes.
Right. Liz, there's one section of companies in India which have mandated work from office, but there are many who have still saying that they're okay with a hybrid workforce, and we are seeing that happen across different industries. And they're also allowing BYOD. Now that I'm sure adds a lot of challenge from a Jamf perspective. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. We don't have published IDC data on this, but our estimate is among the large Indian enterprises, especially, around 60% of those companies allow for a hybrid workforce and allow for BYOD. And there's another important statistic that I found in our research. So as per IDC research, 52% of Indian enterprises said that they had a ransomware attack in 2024. Of that, 39% said that their endpoint devices were directly impacted. Now that's a large, non-trivial number. So my question to you is, when you look for implementing your solution in a BYOD environment, and also in an environment where employees are working from anywhere, even maybe logging onto your office network through a public Wi-Fi system, for instance, right? I'm sure there are a lot of challenges. How do you manage those challenges? What are those challenges in the first place? And then how do you mitigate those challenges? Is something I'd love to hear.
Yeah, it's a great question. BYOD is a very hot topic, but it's important to remember, if you just take a step back, a lot of companies are still dealing with company-owned devices. And when you think about company-owned devices, what companies are trying to solve for is making sure, especially with mission critical or frontline workers, that they have access to the right apps for their role. And when you think about the end user, they're really interested in making sure that if you look at the end user from an IT perspective, they want to make sure that they have to touch that device as little as possible, right? So zero touch deployment. They also want to make sure that each device is personal. So, each role has a different set of applications that they might need. And so you got to make sure that each device is very tailored to that role, especially when I talk about mission critical, I'm talking about in retail environments, healthcare, airlines, for example, is another mission critical where you've got devices that are trying to get, baggage on airlines or things like that. And the last thing that we just have to make sure with every device is that it's secure. So if you look at what Jamf offers, we certainly provide the zero touch deployment. That is something that our bread and butter. We've talked about that for a long time. And then you think about how our customers access the cloud and identity management. So we provide a seamless solution for our customers, the end user, the person that's using the device, to be able to log on to their application or their device and be able to get the applications that they need. And then from a security perspective, our customers, they care about our C-level executives care about being secure. Our end user really just cares about making sure that they're safe, right? They don't want to think about it. And we offer, we're a leading provider in threat differentiation or detection, and also really differentiate around threat hunting. So all those things happen in the background, and it really helps on a mobile experience, especially in a hybrid environment, which we see globally is still something that we solve for quite nicely.
Okay. Ben, your thoughts on this? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure. I think adding the BYOD element on top of that, just creates additional complexities, right? And those need to be solved. I think what you described before around, work from anywhere as well, individuals trying to do their job either from home or in a public network environment, right? So how can they be sure that they are protected, simply even just browsing from a personal nature or accessing their corporate data? Both the individual and the organization want to make sure that they are secure at that point. So our tools are built around that, as Liz already mentioned, from a threat detection, threat hunting capabilities. Those are super important in those areas. What we also see with BYOD though is that kind of balance between security and privacy for the individual. So some individuals coming into the workplace maybe have some concerns around, okay, I have the security tool on my device, but what is it looking at? What's it inspecting? Is my personal data something that the company can access? Is the company watching my browsing habits? And what we've built is a platform which enables corporate data to be protected, separated from private use of the device. So the two go separately. There's a lot more inspection in the area of making sure that the device is secure, that the user is authenticated in order to reach the company data. But if we know it's simple web browsing from a personal nature, we'll push that traffic in a different direction without inspection. So that's the balance that we're really trying to take at Jamf.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, because I think most employees automatically assume that the corporate is watching everything. So I think it's great that you clarified that, and if you proactively address it, it's something that will also put a lot of employees at ease.
Yep.
Wonderful. Chiranjeev, I'd like to ask you from an India context, especially with DPDP likely to come into effect pretty soon. What's your take on this whole topic?
Yeah, on the BYOD front, I think as a concept or as an approach, I think has been around for a while.
Yeah.
I think what helped in terms of the adoption to kind of leapfrog obviously was COVID. I think where organization kind of gave that freedom to all their employees in terms of you can work on any device, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
Right. I think it was more in terms of a situational requirement, which actually kind of helped in terms of many organizations kind of adopt onto that. I think for India perspective as well, while many tech companies are kind of adopting this, again, we see adoption in terms of certain regulated industries as well. For example, airline, banking, these are really highly regulated industries that we have, and BYOD as a conversation or as an approach is kind of opening up. Okay. With DPDP kind of coming in, right? I think, while India is kind of more or less, many organizations have kind of followed the usual GDPR as a framework. Right. I think now, since the bill is passed and as a law it's kind of existing and probably come into effect anytime, I think organizations are looking at in terms of, while they keep the experience part of it in terms of making sure that they give that freedom to the users, but also kind of DPDP kind of brings that accountability for them in terms of saying that, okay, what are you doing with privacy? What are you doing with in terms of data protection, right? I think that's where probably Jamf, for us, BYOD as such is a big aspect. I think we have very few vendors in terms of actually having a licensing model in terms of built for BYOD as well. So we have specific workflows created around that, and where an enterprise or a corporate can be rest assured that their data is kind of secured. And from a employee perspective, their private, part of the element is kind of clearly kind of bifurcated.
No, that's wonderful to hear. I mean, to give that kind of assurance to a company, especially those who are in a regulated industry, like these examples that you gave on banking, I think that's very heartening to note. And I'm sure we are going to see this, get entrenched into a number of industries going forward.
Yeah.
All right. We are running short of time. Time is always a scarce commodity. But I'd like to quickly go around the table and get your views on where do you think the MDM industry is headed? With so much change happening in the tech industry, what is it that customers are going to expect over the next few years, and how is Jamf positioned to take care of those expectations? Maybe Liz, if I can start with you.
Sure, absolutely. So the reality is that within the MDM space, well, really with our customers and organizations, is they really want it to be simple, and they want it to be something that requires less and less touch, so that they can actually focus on security. If you think about a device, the device right now in each organization, we might have an IT organization, we might have a security organization, but it's still one device, right? And so we have to make it easy for our end user, our IT groups, and also the end user that's actually using the device to make it very simple. And I think that's where, Jamf's roadmap is headed too, is like we think about making things simple. Our purpose at Jamf is to simplify work, and that's where we're headed.
All right, Ben?
Just building on that, really, I think automation is probably something that our customers are looking for help from us.
Right.
Again, it's about scaling things quickly.
Yeah.
So some of the things we built recently and launched at our most recent JNUC, our user conference last year, we have a blueprints, which is something that helps the IT organization scale out and push out applications to users and configurations to users in a simple, very fast motion. That's the type of thing that we're going to keep evolving and developing for our customers. Automate things faster for our customers.
Chiranjeev, are Indian customers any different? What's your take?
Not really. I think it's pretty much the same. I think we're getting into a phase where MDM is a core requirement,
right,
and it's not a good to have. I think we have organizations even with a few tens of devices kind of making sure that they have the right tool to kind of manage the devices. And also in terms of MDM is also heads into in terms of making sure that security is also kind of taken care. So you need to kind of have MDM in place to kind of secure the devices.
Right.
And from a Jamf perspective, I think for India, I think that's why hundreds of customers over here kind of trust on our solutions in terms of not just managing the devices, but also in terms of securing the overall Apple fleet.
Oh, wonderful. I think it was a wonderful conversation. I, for one, at least when I started this conversation, I had a lot of questions in my mind. I think many of them are answered now. And I will leave assured that my data is in safe hands as long as we have the right purpose-built solution in place in my enterprise.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Jamf After Dark is a podcast from Jamf and copyright in 2025, all rights reserved. Technical details and product offerings may change at any time, so always check jamf.com for the latest information on our products and services. You can reach out to us if you have any questions or comments or suggested show topics, and of course, we love fan mail. Simply send a friendly email to info@jamf.com with the subject "Attention to the Podcast." We're also a sponsor of the Mac Admins Foundation, and you can find several Jamfs available on the Mac Admins Slack channel. And of course, if you need support, visit support.jamf.com to open a ticket to get your technical questions answered. Special thanks to our guests this week. And of course, as always, special thanks to our audio engineers, Merlin and Martin, who help us sound great. Until next time, I'm Kat Garbus, and we'll catch you after dark again.